Welcome back to another episode of the Pain, Performance, and Pohada podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nick Smith. I'm a licensed physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach for Jiu-Jitsu and other combat athletes. We are coming off the tail end of Kids Pans. And for those of you who don't necessarily follow youth Jiu-Jitsu so much, Kids Pans is Worlds, basically. They don't have a Worlds event yet. But Kids Pans is the closest thing. It's the biggest youth grappling tournament on the planet. If you win that, you're considered basically a world champion. The best of the best show up. And I had the luxury of working with a handful of kids who competed this last year at Pans. It was just this weekend. Overall, everybody except one placed, which is incredible. Both the gym that I work for and the gym that I train at both had multiple athletes that crushed it. So it's really cool to see kids training so hard and at the highest level. And unless you participate in the sport, it's kind of hard to understand like how much this actually matters. But this tournament means a lot. And these kids, especially here at Sector, I know what they're going through. They're coming in here training with me a couple days a week for strength and conditioning. Some of them are doing extra stuff for rehab because they're banged up. They're wrestling. They have a wrestling class. They're doing jiu-jitsu multiple times. It's in the summer, so sometimes they're training twice. They're going to these wrestling camps. Anything to get ahead. And it kind of brings me back to my story of when I raced BMX. And not to make this about me, that's not the point. But I worry about burnout a lot. And for those of you who are listening to this, I made a post and celebrated the kids because they crushed it. And I'm incredibly proud of them. And my last sentence, I really hope it hit home. And I said, now go be kids and enjoy your summer. Because a lot of these kids are like sacrificing, time with friends. Yes, they are friends and they hang out with each other, but all they do is eat, breathe, and sleep jiu-jitsu. And I worry about burnout so much because there's things about jiu-jitsu that go way, 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 way beyond medals. Right? These little pieces of metal that we pay copious amounts of money to the IBJJF for that ultimately don't mean anything. Yes, there are some accolades that you can get. Yes, you're a Kids Pans champion. That is important, especially for a 10-year-old, that they're training. They spend, 95% of their time thinking about or doing. But on the grand scheme of what jiu-jitsu offers, beyond that, community, not orthopedic health, but health, a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging. There's so much that the sport really offers, and I would hate to see a kid put their blood, sweat, and tears into the sport so early, not be able to have any kind of balance and just fizzle out. And that will inevitably happen. A lot of these kids I work with, they probably won't be doing jiu-jitsu in 6 years from now. That's just it's the nature of it. Things come up. High school comes up. Kids get, they start doing dating and, they might find another love. Maybe they end up taking up some other sport, or a lot of kids transition to wrestling or whatever it may be. But I don't want it to be because of burnout and they're just like, I'm done with this. Like, there's no point in doing this. I don't like it anymore. I don't love it anymore. And that's what I felt with BMX. I'll never race again, ever. I won't promote it or tell my daughter to do it. I'll ride my mountain bike. I love that still, but I don't love BMX to ride my bike. I have friends who are stoked to ride their bike. They love riding their bike. I don't really love my riding bike. Just don't. I only did it to train. I only did it to compete, and I only did it to win. That's all I was there for. And I wish I had somebody to protect me at times. I had other hobbies. I did other things, but I completely burned out. And I was like, I don't want this anymore. And even when I went back to race, and I raced pro for a little bit, it wasn't the same. It was only fun when I was winning. I only liked the training. I only liked the aspect of it. I actually didn't even like the training. I like the results of the training. I was willing to sacrifice and work hard to be able to win, but I didn't enjoy riding my bike. I just didn't. And that sucks. And I would hate to see a kid, like I said, just like pour their life into this sport and essentially just like fizzle out and never want to do it again because it's just like was taught to them to be a job. And I think, you know, Sean and Nolan and Miles are great coaches, and I think they have a lot of perspective. They've all been highly successful youth athletes that have transitioned into adulthood, and they're still doing jiu-jitsu. So I think they are good mentors, and I'm less worried about the kids here. But when they add another thing, even me being here, you know, as a strength and conditioning coach, like it's entirely necessary, and I think it sets them apart and why there's a big piece of their success. But I also worry about more stuff. You know, I want to simplify this. I want this to be fun. So when I hear feedback from the kid, you know, the parents being like, they love going to your class, or, you know, they really enjoy lifting weights. Like that makes me happy. I don't want this to be a chore or be like, shit, it's another thing to do for jiu-jitsu, where it's just like, if I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, I got to do weightlifting, I got to do wrestling, I got to do gi, I got to do no gi, and like all this stuff. I don't want that for them. I want this to always be fun. And that's also something I'm trying to kind of like isolate, although it is integrated and it is for the intention of jiu-jitsu. I want these kids to also come in here and be like, this is refreshing and new. It's different. Yes, that's participating towards jiu-jitsu, but I want this to be a fresh new thing that they can grow and, you know, maybe have a passion for later too. Or something that's just so ingrained in their DNA early on before their prefrontal cortexes are fully developed that they will continue to lift weights for the rest of their life. You know, being strong, having muscle, there's no disadvantage to it, you know? Like, you live longer, you're stronger, you're more resilient, you're going to stay up, be your grandkids to watch, you know, your grandkids that are your age now. And building those habits in to reduce injury, there's so many benefits of it. So burnout's been on my mind a lot, just thinking about these kids, watching how much they pour into this, you know, seeing the tears from happiness or from sadness, you know, even the ones that placed, it wasn't enough, you know, second place wasn't enough for them. They came to win, which I totally understand. But seeing the community, you know, their teammates and cheer each other on, and just how hard they've put the work in this weight room, even just getting extra reps in, whenever they can. It's really, adults don't train this hard. They don't. Some do, but most of them don't. They think they train hard, but these kids are animals. If you're a parent, you're listening to this, probably don't have this issue, but keep an eye out for those kids who are intrinsically motivated. They're a gift, really. If you don't have to tell them to train and they just do it, God, it's such a fucking gift. But set up systems for them to enjoy this stuff. Make them not hate it, you know? Keep an eye out for them. It's easy to watch them just like show out. You know, if they're doing well, it's easy to participate in. But if they're having a struggle, if they're hitting a plateau, make sure they have those things to kind of decompress, separate themselves, detox, so to say, from the sport, even if it's just for a week. Do other things, enjoy hobbies, make sure they're spending time with friends that maybe aren't necessarily from jiu-jitsu, but just keep an eye on them. Burnout sucks. Maybe you've had the same experience, but just on my thoughts, a little rant today, but the sport is really cool. It offers a lot to a lot of people, and I want people to be able to enjoy it at some capacity for the rest of their lives. You know, even if it's just something where, okay, I go a couple days a week. That's my fitness class. You know, I just do this. I love the camaraderie, that type of thing. Learn a skill, do something that's really hard, force yourself to do something hard, push yourself. get a little sweat going, have some muscle soreness the next day, maybe a nice cut, or I got some cuts and bruises from training. Get a black eye once in a while, live a little, know that you're not made of glass. But I hope these kids train forever, or just find, aspects of the sport where they don't resent it. Would be really cool. And I hope to continue to be a piece of that and cultivate their futures. Because man, what a blessing it is to be able to work with them. They're awesome. They keep me motivated. That's it. I'm getting sentimental. Another episode. Remember, pain is not something you should fear, just something you should respect. This is the way. See you.